Namaskar. Welcome to this session. We are taking up the 15th Sutra of the Kaivalyapada. The matter under discussion was the polemic warfare between the idealistic philosophers and the realistic philosophers. The idealistic philosophers of the class of panpsychism believed that the whole manifestation around is a mental fabrication. Our mental fabrication creates the universe around. And it is called the panpsychism in the West. And it originated from the Vijnanavada of Buddhism in the East. So Buddhism had its branches, and one of the branches was called Vijnanavada. And the Vijnanavada is the parental body for modern idealistic philosophies. One of those is panpsychism. So, and the idealists were taking the counter position that the world around us is real. Not that the mountain is human mental fabrication, the oceans is not human mental fabrications. On one hand, on the other hand, the rose, the apple, the mangoes, the fruits are not manifestation of human mind. So, this was the moot point that we were discussing in our previous session. So, here comes the sutra. Vastu samye chitta bhedat tayoho vibhakthaha panthaha. Vastu samyam. It might be one and the same object. Such as we cited the rose. Rose is one object. But in different minds, it evokes different reactions. Or it gives different cognitions. For instance, in the case of the rose, what is the thought or cognition of a botanist? What is the thought and cognition of a horticulturist? What is the thought and the knowledge process or reaction in a flower merchant, a poet, a physicist, a neurologist? So, one object such as rose can evoke different reactions and different thought processes and different experiences and different reactions. That is chitta bhedat. With the chitta bheda, that means person to person the mind changes. Mind is different. So, therefore, the vastu and the jnana, the object and the knowledge, they are not identical. They are not one and the same. Jnana is one, vastu is another thing. Like in the example that we just now cited, the jnana, the knowledge in 10 different minds and psyches will be 10, but the rose outside will be one. So, that is what is encapsulated in the word chitta bhedat tayoho vibhakthaha panthaha. So that's not ekarupa. The object and jnana is not ekarupa. Object might be one, but somebody will be delighted, somebody will be sorrowed, somebody will be thoughtful, somebody will be delirious. Citing a rose, somebody can be thoughtful, can be a poet, On the other hand, somebody can be delirious, infatuated, because the object is a one path. The object is a one path and the jnana is another path. So these are two different processes and paths. How the objects come about is one path, and how the knowledges come about is another path. That is what is encapsulated in the part of the sutra, vibhaktaha panthaha. Pantha means path. So object comes through particular route, that is route, route. The object appears with a particular kind of process, like in case of rose, there has to be a field, there has to be a plant, there has to be a rose plant, and then it will bear out a rose fruit. So when there is suitable ground and suitable plant, you will get the rose. Be that Asian continent or African continent or American continent or European continent. But the knowledge is totally different. It is something very, very subjective aspect. So the objective entity has a process which the physicist will be describing, life scientist will be describing, and the knowledge is totally subjectivistic, which is the subject matter of mindologists and psychologists. How the reactions change. Rose is one, but there are 10 different reactions in 10 different minds of 10 different people who are objectifying the rose. So this topic is now getting a place in the very independent sutra, the 15th sutra that we are dealing with now. So the point is, we have to understand the reality in which we live. The object at sight, such as rose, is not vijnana matra. It is not related from our mind. It doesn't have source in our mind. Not that our mind is seed and rose on the plant is the flower. Well, incidentally, the deistic philosophers say, theistic philosophers and deistic philosophers say, yes, the objects outside us, around us, are no doubt have source in mind, but not in our mind, not in our individual mind, not in our personal mind, but there is archetypal mind. Vidhata, the creator mind, the creator, that entity, the supreme entity of which the metaphysics has liking, and it is fond. They are fond of this entity. So if at all it is a mental fabrication, it is not the mental fabrication of you and me, the mortals, who are ephemeral, who come and go. But if at all it is it has a source in the mind, it has source in the mind of the what is called as archetypal mind, the mind of Vidhata, the mind of creator. Anyway, let it be as it may. So we'll proceed to consider this sutra now. So it is not Vijnana Matra, it is Vastu Matra. And this sutra is answering another question. That is, the object is only one, a singular object. But the perceptions and apperceptions and the thoughts and reactions in different people is different. As I said a while ago, that what knowledge or thought process will be in the mind of, say, a botanist on one hand, a poet on the other hand, or philosopher on one hand, and delirious sensual person on the other hand. So which of these minds has given rise to flower on the plant, or the flower in the vase, or flower in a bouquet? So the point is, one single object evokes different reactions, different thoughts, and thought processes in different people. So although the minds are reacting, minds are responding differently in 10 different people, the object remains the one and the same. All the 10 people will say this is rose. All the 10 people will admit that this is rose. And, there need not be any second opinion about it. That all the 10 people will declare that this is a rose. The object is a rose. The flower is the rose flower. But the experience that comes to 10 people will be 10 experiences. The thought process that will be raised up will be 10 different thought processes, 10 different reactions, 10 different responses. And that's why the sutra Vastu Samye Chitta Bhedat Vibhaktaha Tayoho Vibhaktaha Panthaha. So the point is, external object is bhautik object. It is elemental object. It is a material object. Rose is material manifestation. And the chitta, the mind that is there in 10 people, is generated out of ahankara. It is ahankarika. So the rose is bhautik and the mind is ahankarik. This is the mind is ahankarik is the postulation of Sankhya philosophy. And therefore their paths are totally different. The path through which the mind, psyche, consciousness trades and the mind through which the matter trades are two different paths. Now, in the object such as rose, you can cite Prithvi, Ap, Tej, Vayu, Akash. All the 5 elements can be traced there. But in Chitta, or the consciousness, the mind stuff, you will find Ahankar. Ahankara Tattvam. The Chitta will be having root in Asmita. So these are two different paths. From where the Chitta comes, from where the mind stuff comes, and from where the rose comes, are totally different sources. And their paths are totally different, divergent paths. If it is rooted in Chitta, if the object is rooted in Chitta, that it, if it is assumed that it ensues from Chitta, like the panpsychists hold, Vijnanavadins hold, then it can result into bizarre situation that you sow the seeds of mango and instead of mangoes being reaped, you will reap dogs and cats and rats and mice. That doesn't happen that way. So, if you sow the seeds of mango, you are going to get only mango tree. From mango tree, you will not get some other manifestation, living or non-living. So, sowing the seeds of mango, you won't get cats and dogs and mice and uh, horses and ponies and monkeys, because they have different paths to come into manifestation. If, as the panpsychists believe that all the objects are vijnana matra or vijnana rupa, if they ensue from the subjective mind, subjective consciousness, which is the philosophy of both the Vijnanavadins 2500 or even more years back, which was called as Drushti Srushtivada in Indian philosophy. Beautiful terminology. Drushti Srushtivada. Drushti is your vision, one's vision. And Srushti is creation around. So they say Srushti comes from Drushti. The creation comes from one's vision. So there is fallacy in such postulations. And that's why it is called idealism. Because, as repeatedly said, that the path, the routes, the roads for objective world is one and subjective realm is another. The objects also have parinamas. Objects also undergo changes because they are material. The chitta also undergoes changes because chitta too is material. Prakrutika. Chitta is prakrutik. Chitta is coming out of nature, natural phenomenalism. The object rose is also coming out of natural phenomenalism. So both have parinamas, both have changes. But the chitta parinama is in one track, one path, one road. And Bhuta Parinama or Vastu Parinama is another path, another road, another channel. Both are independent. Therefore, Vibhaktaha Panthaha is the part of the sutra which is coming up here. Well, to give little preface to the topic that we are discussing, in the previous sutra we saw that there are three gunas, sattva, raja, tama, three gunas. Sattva, raja, tama, prakasha, kriya, sthiti. Prakasha shila, kriya shila, sthiti shila. Shukla, Krishna lohita. So these are the three gunas postulated by the Sankhya philosophers. And from three gunas, you get one Vastu Parinama. So we saw in the previous sutra that the gunas of different proportions, gunas in different proportions in different processes give rise to particular objective reality. And therefore this is cosmos and not chaos. So also taking the view of modern science that all matter is proton, neutron, electron. The proton, neutron, electron in particular combination and particular number, numerical aspects, the objective reality will be changing. And therefore we have diversified objects with a unified source that everything is proton, neutron, electron. But from proton, neutron, electron you can get solid matter, liquid matter, gaseous matter. Beneficial matter to maleficious matter. It can be poison to nectar. It can be super white to super jet black. It can be uh, ignoble, highly ignoble to very, very, very noble, highly noble. Why? Because there's three basic factors of modern science, the nuclear physics branch of it, that everything is proton, neutron, electron, and why the Sankhya's go further beyond the realm of physical reality, and then they say it is sattva, raja, tama, three gunas. So a question can be raised with the postulation of the Sankhya philosophers that everything is essentially, intrinsically, inherently sattva, raja, tama gunas. So comes a supplementary question, a question or a supplementary question that the Vasturupa Parinama, the manifestation in the form of objects such as cow, such as rose, such as mountain, such as river. So that is one Parinama. But one Parinama gives rise to 10 different reactions in 10 different subjective minds, spatialized minds. This is something that should be taken cognizance of. One single object gives rise to 10 different knowledges, 10 different thoughts, 10 different reactions in 10 different spatialized mind psyche consciousness of an individual. Although the 10 minds will unanimously declare it is rose, not that somebody says rose and somebody says hibiscus and somebody says champaka. That's not the case. So they all denote one flower. But what is in the mind will be totally different. 10 different processes, functions, cognitions, reactions, thought process. So what is this intriguing thing? One object should evoke one reaction, one knowledge. Like looking at that rose, everyone says it is rose. The 10 minds say it is rose. But why this intriguing thing that there is one kind of structure of knowledge in a poet, another structure of knowledge in a botanist, another structure of knowledge in a life scientist, another structure of knowledge in a natural scientist, another structure of knowledge in a flower merchant, another structure of knowledge in sensual person, delirious person. So, one object gives rise to 10 minds rather than one mind giving rise to one flower, one object. So, this fact should not be sidelined. That's why we considered the sutra, earlier sutra, Parinama Ekatvat Vastu Tattvam. Parinama Anekatva should be the case. That 10 different minds should give 10 different rise to objects rather than one object. So one object can incite 10 different reactions, but 10 different reactions don't give rise to 10 different objects. So as many minds, so many reactions and thoughts and perceptions and cognitions, etc., etc. So what is this intriguing thing? The three gunas, they have a unified effect coming out of them. So then comes the doubt If the three gunas, they should also give rise to one effect, and the three gunas give rise to 10 effects. When it comes to subjective realm, the 10 different effects are raised up. When it comes to objective flower, the three gunas give rise to only one flower. How come? This is something quite intriguing and complex thing. So, the subjective realm and objective realm are two different realms which should not be confused with at all. So, in this respect, let's try to have a little opening to set aside any confusion or complexion. Now, suppose there is lotus in front of us. Now, the lotus is handled by a psychologist. Then he will give his analysis of perception, apperception, cognition, etc., etc. So he explains what happens in eyes. The lotus in front falls in the instrument of eyes. Eyes have a reverse configuration of lotus, as they tell us, and then it is made obverse in the brain. So the neurology in the eyes is triggered, which catches the ditto form, shape, and color of that lotus. So he starts explaining the nervous system, what is called as called Majja Samstha, the nervous system, how it is triggered, how there is something called as synapses, how there is some kind of electrical function in the nervous system. Now, and therefore the mind registers that this is lotus. So there is that description which comes in psychology and neurology combinations. So any psychologist and neurologist will tell you how you get the knowledge of object that it is a lotus. So he speaks about apperception, perception, synapses, etc., the flash of consciousness, which says this is a lotus. Now, other person is a flower merchant. Now, what thought process is structured in his mind? It is like this: where will I get a good market for this lotus? Where will I get consumers for the lotus who will pay me fabulously? Not that anyone will buy the lotus, but who will really pay me more, for whom it is more valuable. For whom it is more valuable, therefore prepare to shell more money for one lotus, rather than somebody prepared to just pay nominal and try to take the lotus away. So he is a flower merchant, so he has business thought process, business related thought process. So where is the good market? Where will I get good market? When will I get good market? Now that is what is a thought process of a flower merchant. The third one is Vanaspati Shastragnya, a botanist, or a horticulturist, or a nursery gardener. He might be a gardener. So he thinks, how can I have harvest of a beautiful breed of roses? how to grow roses, how to have rose orchards. How can I create this place as a rose orchards? Or lotus orchard. How can I have more and more lotuses? What do I do to? What do I need? So he looks at the sunlight, the temperature, and other things such as soil and water, mineral, manure, etc., etc. So his thought process, the path of thought process or the path of thinking is totally different. Somebody, a delirious person, thinks of his girlfriend where he has extramarital relationships, and then how I can please her, how I can give gratification to her. So he has a different thought process. How should I hand over this rose or lotus to my beloved? So that her facial lotus would bloom and blossom, which will give further gratification to me. So these are all different thought processes. And therefore, there is no basis to say that the rose has a root, source in spatialized mind, individual mind, personal mind. Because the object can give rise to different emotions, such as delight to sorrow, pain to pleasure, etc. So it can give rise to sukha, dukkha, moha of different degrees. Anyway, this is a kind of preface to the topic of the sutra. Now let's move actually to the sutra. Therefore, aphorist comes to answer this kind of complexity and confusion. वस्तु साम्ये चित्त भेदात् तयोः vibhaktaha panthaha. So we have seen the meaning that although it is one and the same object, the subjective entity goes in particular path and road, and the object comes through particular path and road. So, therefore, one object can be a support to many different minds rather than each mind being support to the object. So therefore Vyasa says, Tat khalu na eka chitta parikalpitam na api aneka chitta parikalpitam tu kimtu swapratishtham. So object doesn't have its parentage in any particular mind. One object doesn't have root in one mind, or one object doesn't have roots in many minds. It is swapratishtham. It is self-existent. It is having its own entity. It doesn't have to originate from somebody's mind or someone's mind or minds of so many people. So it is not parikalpana. It is not imagination. Object is not imagination of one mind or several minds, one spatialized mind or several spatialized minds. It is swapratisthita. So this is how the philosophers are now postulating about the reality. Katham vastu samye chitta bhedat. Now, one object is one. Then if you believe, as the panpsychists believe, that it has root in which mind? Does the rose has root in the mind of the horticulturist or botanist or poet or philosopher or a sensual person? Where is the root of the object? So, Vastu is one, object is one, the Jnana is diversified. Dharmapeksham chittasya vastu samye api sukha jnanam bhavati. Adharmapeksham tat eva dukkha jnana vidyapeksham tat eva मूढ़ ज्ञानम सम्यक दर्शनापेक्षम तत्व माध्यस्थ ज्ञान biti. So beautiful kind of position here in the forensic language of Vyasa, of the philosophers. Dharma karane, because of dharma in mind, you will get sukham. Sighting a rose or sighting a lotus, you will be happy. And therefore you will have a structure of knowledge based on your delight and pleasure and happiness. So if there is dharma adhikyam in the chitta, it will give rise to one structure. If it is adharma in the chitta, if the chitta is tainted by adharma, viciousness, then it will give rise to dukkham, structure of sorrow, structure of torment, structure of worry, anxiety. With avidya infested in the chitta, it will be moham. And with samyak jnanam, with quintessential knowledge in the chitta, it will give you darshana, samyak darshana. And it will give you the neutrality and little indifference rather than polarities paying havoc. So this is how the objection is answered by the philosophers in forensic language. Kasya tachittena parikalpitam. So out of the four different chittas, dharma infested, adharma infested, avidya infested, and jnana infested, which of this chitta is giving rise to this object? So it will be bizarre to hold as the panpsychists hold, and that's how the panpsychism has been refuted. So therefore, it doesn't have root in the spatialized mind. Objects don't have roots in the spatialized mind. Then that particular lotus or rose which is at sight, about that there comes a statement. Tasmat vastu jnana yoho grahya grahana bheda bhinna yoho vibhaktaha panthaha. So there are different paths for the subjective structure and objective manifestation. So it all depends upon samskars, subliminal impressions, for the structure, subjective structure to get a rise, while that is not there in case of objective reality. So that's how the question has been answered by this sutra repudiating the stand of Vijnanavadins. But despite all these kind of argumentations, which are of course seem to be victory for the philosophers, yet there comes a doubt in the mind. It's actually cavil. So the cavil can get rise anywhere, even if there is no genuine reason to be, or a logical reason to question someone and something. Yet cavil can find a place everywhere. So the prima facie view that is the idealistic philosophers, the panpsychists, the Vijnanavadis have a cavil. They don't just give a signal of surrender and supplication and do not accept the defeat. They are giving rise to what is called as kutarka, cavil. They say like this: Vastu and Jnana, okay, they are different. As you postulate, as you logically postulate, and quite amount of reasoning. Vastu is one thing, Jnana is another thing. So, although there is Vastu Jnana Bhinnatvam, but Vastu is Bhogya for the subjective entity. It is a matter to be endured, either enjoyed or suffered by the subjective entity. So the Vastu and Jnana are going hand in hand. And the Vastu is said to be existing only with the Jnana of an object. If you don't have the Jnana, if you don't have cognition that what is at sight is rose, the rose has no place there. Like if you are fast asleep and I show you a rose, the rose is of no avail because you are fast asleep or you are unconscious. So Jnana and Vastu, subjective aspect of Jnana and objective aspect of Vastu should coexist. And during the Jnana, only Vastu has Satta. If you don't have Jnana, then you almost have a condition. It is as well as no objective entity around, objective reality around. So yet, Vastu depends upon Jnana. You must be awakeful. You must be in your senses. It cannot be unconscious. And in that case, the object around is meaningless. It is almost non-existent. So, at least admit that Vastu has somewhere a chord with the Jnana. Without Jnana, without subjective entity, objective entity would be meaningless, or almost it will be non-existent. The object doesn't get proved without subjective entity's knowledge or the cognition, perception of the subjective entity. And therefore they say the Vastu is Pratyaksha Sapeksha. The object is dependent on Pratyaksham, direct perception, that is a wakeful state of consciousness. And therefore we say the Vastu is Chitta Sapeksha. Therefore we say the Vastu, objective entity, is dependent on the Chitta. See, if there is a rose in front of you but you don't take cognizance of the rose, the existence of the rose is meaningless. It has no purpose. You must cognize it. Moreover, the rose is quite ephemeral. A rose will die after a couple of hours if you hold the rose in the hand. It is not everlasting. But the rose in your mind can really be taking bites of your mind. The rose in the mind will linger and will be devastating the mind or will be nurturing the mind, while the rose in the hand will have gone dry and only worth throwing it away. So the rose in the Chitta is more long lasting than actually objective entity the rose. But however, that means the Chitta occupies the rose for a longer time than your hand occupying the rose. So there is always a relationship, and they are all, the Jnana and object are coexisting, and therefore we say it is Chitta Sapeksha. Mind should cognize for the rose to be taken as rose, deemed to be as rose, taken as rose. So understand the dependence of the object with the entity of the Chitta. So even only during the Jnana, the rose has existence. If there is no jnana, that is, if there is no consciousness, where is the any entity for rose? Rose doesn't exist if one is unconscious. Rose only exists if you are conscious. And therefore, the relationship between the consciousness and the rose cannot be set aside. And that is why we have the position that object is chitta dependent, the object is dependent on the subjectivistic mind. So this is how they have a cavil or a question. Now this needs to be answered. And to answer this question comes the 16th sutra. Na eka chitta tantram vastu tad apramanakam tada kim syat. So he is now setting to answer this cavil. But that is in the 16th sutra. Therefore, we will not look into it at this juncture, but we will consider it in our next session. So enough for the time being. Namaskar all of you.